Now, whether it's a result of old age, political sabotage, or maybe, just maybe, that wrestler, that megastar in WWE might just get over it and then give back with no compunction. Either way, whatever the case, everybody loses. Bret Hart put his own brother over in the middle of the ring during his top drawing years, and on that very same night that he did that, he ended up winning the WWF Championship. He basically booked his own reign before it even started. Hulk Hogan lost cleanly to the Ultimate Warrior at WrestleMania 6, although if you go back and revisit that match, all is not quite what it seems. Yes, Hulk Hogan did lose that match, but he kicked out at 3 1/8, and instead of being upset or angry, he put his arms up in the sky and looked at the heavens, desperate for answers. Instead of putting the Ultimate Warrior over, he decided to put Divine Intervention over instead. And worse yet, that isn't even speculation. This was Hulk Hogan's publicised intent. He said as much in his autobiography. Now, Hulk Hogan was a good example of someone who was very good at avoiding having to put people over. He dodged, ducked, dipped, dived and dodged his way throughout his career, but even during his second run in WWE, Vince McMahon decided in his ruthless way that he was going to get what he wanted, and Hulk Hogan was going to put over what he wanted him to put over. And enter Brock Lesnar in August 2002, where Hogan would lie down and be beaten by the next big thing. And as it happens, that was probably the perfect thing to do, because Vince McMahon is Vince McMahon. He wants it to be his company. We do things his way, and it was a lesson to everybody that Vince is going to get what he wants, even if it's Hulk Hogan. Because you see, it doesn't matter if you're Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 14, who didn't want to drop the title to Austin, but did anyway because Undertaker made sure that he did, or you're Stone Cold Steve Austin, who put over The Rock, despite the fact The Rock was departing, more out of a professional courtesy and friendship and respect than anything else. Either way, everybody does it, and Austin put over The Rock put over Brock, and then eventually, Brock, we would find, would put over Drew McIntyre. That is the chain of command. That's how things work. Or at least, that's how it works most of the time, anyway. You see, there's a few examples of exceptions here, but the one biggest one that you can probably all think of is John Cena. Vince McMahon's brand new pet project at one point realised the potential of him and gave him an absolutely astronomical push, the likes we hadn't seen since Hulk Hogan. And unfortunately, John Cena essentially was the kind of guy who ended up breaking the mold a little bit, because despite the fact that everybody put somebody over for many, many, many years, as I'm sure you'll all remember, John Cena didn't. Now yes, obviously there are examples of Cena losing, but losing cleanly was another thing entirely, and it would take a very long time indeed, 16 World Championships to be precise, before Cena would start actually doing that. And let's be honest, now he's in a part of a career where he's on his way out. He's moving into Hollywood, and so we see John Cena putting people over clean every single day. But there was a point where you just couldn't get that for love nor money. You see, the problem with all of this is that during that time when Cena wasn't losing, it created a precedent whereby the main babyface on the show, the face of the company, became sort of immune to a clean defeat. There would always be a reason, whether it was interference, a distraction, there's always something that happened, and that mold would be passed from John Cena onto the likes of Roman Reigns. Now I should point out that's no jibe at Roman Reigns, because he is only doing a job that is being asked of him, but behind the scenes, they always feel like they have to protect their babyfaces no matter what, because they couldn't possibly lose just by having an off day maybe, or just by being outsmarted once and then maybe learning from it. Nope, that can't ever happen. A lot of the times you'll find it's just a distraction or something that takes their mind off the game, or make the odds so insurmountable against them that they have to lose, and that's the reason. And ultimately, it ends up damaging the product because nobody feels the stakes and none of us buy it. As a result, we end up getting a WWE product that's completely lacking in any drama whatsoever, because before anything's even happened, it's so convolutedly put together that we know there's going to be a reason for someone to lose, or there's going to be a rematch that's going to be given, and ultimately at the very end, we're going to see the hero, or their hero, get what they deserve in the eyes of the company. And I don't know, the formula becomes stale and everybody just can't really connect to it at all, because it just doesn't feel real. I mean, take a little step back and look at the guys who've been protected in the past. Let's go, for example, and say the Ultimate Warrior, a guy who was one of the most protected in the company's history, and probably for good reason too. Now, this guy was a megastar, and megastars are made by winning time and time again. Now, I realise that kind of goes against the fundamentals, but there was a reason for this winning streak, and it's because, quite similar to what we'd see used for Goldberg in the future, Ultimate Warrior wasn't that great of a pro wrestler. Ultimate Warrior was a great character. He knew how to get a crowd riled up, but when it came to doing an actual match, there's a reason why squash matches were employed, because that guy had a limited move set, and basically he was very good at that, but anything outside of it, not so much. What he did have in spades though was intensity, insanity, a great look, and an energetic charisma that just could not be matched, and the fans latched onto it. You see, Warrior was kind of an example where he looked like he'd been drawn by one of the focus groups, these young kids who would imagine this hulking, great big superstar with massive muscles and a very distinctive look, something they could latch onto and see as this hero. I mean, kids love anything. It's bright colours, it's a big dude. How could they not be excited about that? But ultimately, because he was so ruthless in terms of how he won time and time again, he didn't really have a huge passion for the business, but that didn't matter because he was there to become a star, to deliver that performance, which he did time and time again, and ultimately made himself an overnight sensation. But the problem with that was, because he was invincible, because he'd win constantly, and he's constantly being pushed as the guy in the company without any question, that began to inflate his ego, which began to bring with it some entitlement. I mean, this was a guy who didn't lose, he got paid very well to not lose, and on top of that, he pretty much worked whenever he felt like it. This guy had it all and it was going to his head. Bret Hart once described seeing an interaction between Warrior and a terminally ill fan at the point where Warrior told him to just wait a fucking minute. I mean, how many minutes did this kid actually have? Let's be honest. And Bret Hart then described him from that interaction as literally the worst role model he'd ever seen. And to be honest, that's probably one of the nicer things that have been said or written about the Ultimate Warrior from that time. You see, once the WWF had decided that this was our guy and established he was going to be the person they'd move forward with in the future, Ultimate Warrior never lost cleanly in canon ever again. The man literally sprinted to the Intercontinental title, and while there was losses to Bobby Heenan along the way, they were just diversions to his ascent. And to be honest, he would never lose the Intercontinental title a second time. He would actually go on to vacate that belt once he ended up winning the big one, the Winged Eagle belt from Hulk Hogan, when they had that match, Intercontinental Champ against WWF Champion, and this actually made Ultimate Warrior, I guess in canon, the most powerful force that the Federation had ever seen. This guy had the two biggest belts in the company, and it was overnight. But as it happens, his WWF title reign was a huge disappointment. He was working familiar opponents from his fairly recent past because all of this was such a quick sprint to the top. He basically had nobody to go against that he hadn't already been against, and that would start to coincide with the slowing down of WWE's popularity. The truth of the matter was, Warrior's work just didn't have the same storytelling or substance as Hulk Hogan's work did. Whether people liked him or not, the guy knew how to tell a story, the guy knew how to get fans engaged, and it wouldn't be long before Vince McMahon would realise this and took the strap off the Ultimate Warrior at Royal Rumble 1991. The irony here though would be that once he lost the belt, Warrior actually started putting on some pretty good matches, and that was completely summarised by his match at WrestleMania 7 in the semi-main event slot, where he put on an absolutely superb match, and suddenly you were starting to think that maybe, just maybe, he was dealing with the pressure of being a WWE star better when he wasn't trying to be Hulk Hogan. But ahead of SummerSlam 1991, Ultimate Warrior was demanding much better terms for his deal than he had previously, claiming that he was just as important, if not more important to the company than Hulk Hogan, the very man he failed to replace. Despite not really wanting to, Vince McMahon acquiesced this request because, let's be honest, he needed Ultimate Warrior for the SummerSlam show. He was booked for it and Vince wanted it to be a hit. But he wouldn't go down quietly, and this would prove to be a massive mistake on Warrior's part because immediately after the show, Vince McMahon would suspend him. That suspension would prove to be indefinite, and we wouldn't see the Ultimate Warrior again until WrestleMania 8, where, to be honest, he worked a lackluster program with Papa Shango, and then he left again a few months later. He would return for one last time in 1996, come back and completely squash a bunch of mid-card talent, but wouldn't really be given a run in the main event scene. Even still, with that said, he started making crazy demands once again because he was getting deals with comics and all sorts of different things, and then ultimately it would result in Warrior and Vince just completely not seeing eye to eye again for the final time because the same old patterns continued to happen, and then before you knew it, Ultimate Warrior would leave the company and he would never ever wrestle again for WWE. You see, this was the creature that was bred through all these victories and being completely invincible and untouchable, ended up messing with the heads of the performers. Ultimate Warrior is the case in this particular one, and they start doing weird and crazy things because they think that they're bigger than what they are. This is all, at the end of the day, a creative choice by Vince McMahon and the creative team. They can pull that away whenever they want. Now yes, if you dig deep enough, you might well be able to find some clean losses on Ultimate Warrior's record. One particular one is that footage exists of him losing in an Italian house show in 1988 to Andre the Giant. But as we all know, house shows don't count. He might have lost a few other ones on the house show circuit, but they don't feature in a WWE canon when it boils down to it. The problem is when that wrestler starts demanding that they don't lose because they feel like it would damage their image or whatever it might be. Again, the image is something that was created by the company, so it's up to them at this point. You see, the problem here is that when performers start deciding that they shouldn't lose, or they shouldn't be doing this, or they shouldn't be doing that, something has gone really badly wrong here, because that's what was happening with Warrior. Every time he wasn't happy, he would spit the dummy out, and the temperamental nature of his attitude just completely stunk. It ruined everything that the company was trying to do in terms of if they wanted to go in a certain direction and he decided they didn't want to, then it wasn't going to happen. That just can't be allowed to live in that form of professional wrestling, because this is something where everyone has to work together to achieve the end goal. In this case, Ultimate Warrior wasn't doing that at all. I mean, Christ, I'm not saying it would work, but imagine if you just thought, right, I'm going to try and give the boss a reason to help me not lose. For example, you could say, I'm going to work on my cardio as a storyline, and therefore I'm going to outlast everybody in the ring. I'm going to work on the art of professional wrestling. I'm going to become so prolific at that I'm going to be able to counter every move and then keep myself from losing that way. I don't know. I'm going to work on, I don't know, being better with the crowd, and the crowd are going to cheer me on, and with the crowd behind me, I can never lose. Any of these are narrative devices that, yes, Vince would probably shoot them down, but at least you'd be trying to offer something as a reasoning for all of this. Ultimate Warrior just wanted what he wanted, and he wanted it right now, and if he didn't get it, he just spat the dummy out. And yet, to be honest, despite having said all of that, for the longest time, Ultimate Warrior was given the keys to the kingdom, and he was just allowed to win no matter what. And people put up with his attitude because they thought they needed that in the company, they needed this guy. And honestly, it's just toxic. So in 2020, it's hard to say whether there is a case to be made for maintaining the formula of the never losing clean babyface, who using that as a formula to kind of get the next megastar. I think it can work. There are guys out there who can do it, who have the right temperament, who are suited for the role. Roman Reigns is a good example, despite whether he got rejected or not at the time. He is the guy who could pull it off, I think, in these scenarios. If it was ever put back in his court, that's the guy. But ultimately, as has been proven time and time again, the audience don't necessarily want it, but it's something the company do want. So what is the formula for this? I don't know. It must lie somewhere in being the kind of guy who knows their own worth and is being solidly good at what they do in the ring and can genuinely put themselves as that contender. And then there's the other guy who is just unprofessional, wants what he wants and demands it because he thinks he's better than he is. Somewhere in between those two might just be the formula, because let's be honest, you do still need to have a bit of self-interest when it comes to these things. Someone like Stone Cold Steve Austin, while he always did business when he needed to and fought like hell when he didn't want to, a la Brock Lesnar, he'd still always come up with the right thing, and sometimes that was right for the company, sometimes it was right for him, but all in all, it ended up being right most of the time for the storyline. But regardless of all of that, I think the one thing I am fairly certain about, having just gone through all of this, is that in the case of the Ultimate Warrior, the one wrestler who never really lost clean, that is not the way the formula needs to go, and it doesn't work that way, nor should it ever happen again. So there you have it, that's the one WWE superstar who never lost clean. But let me know your thoughts all about it in the comments down below. Don't forget to like and share, hit the old subscribe button if you haven't already. You can find the original article for this at whatculture.com. That's by Michael Sidgwick, give it a read, it's a good one. You can follow What Culture on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE. You can follow me on Twitter at It's Adam Nicholas, or if you just want some more videos, there should be some just over here. I've been Adam Nicholas, this has been What Culture Wrestling, and I'll see you next time.